YouTube, Heir of Skulls here. So skulls for the Skull Throne, blood for the Blood God. I know it's backwards, but whatever. You know, I'm not technically like an actual follower of Khorne. I'm just a stand-in heir of Khorne. So I'm going to be playing a battle today with Indie Pride. I'm taking the new Chaos Lord of Khorne. It's one that's going to be available to his faction, and I've got him on the Juggernaut mount here, which makes him a real tank against infantry. You can see the damage potential there is rather massive. And then I've got a very widespread army of Khorne here to go fight the Dawi of Indie Pride. Now, this is a matchup that both of us, I think, we're kind of expecting, you know, Khorne to present quite a few challenges for the Dawi, and so I think that Indie was really working on some, all right, what kind of things could you try or bring that would frustrate the machinations of Khorne? Now, I have 3 Marauder throwing axes here. I feel like that this is a must for Khorne in the Dwarf matchup, and the reason why is gyrocopters. Now, they're good for other things, but if you don't bring these and the Dwarves pick gyrocopters, then you're just going to be a laughing stock as you approach the enemy and get shot to death by gyrocopters. So the Marauder throwing axes are an absolute necessity. Hey, by the way, folks, DLC is today, and blood is today as well, so you're going to be seeing some Dawi blood spilled on the ground. I'm running the blood effects at about 50%. That's where I found that I like them. There is a slider you can mess with on them to adjust it, and whenever it's on full, it's still kind of, I mean, it looks better than Warhammer 2, but it still kind of reminds me of the ketchup. I was trying to bait blasting charges here, by the way. Indy's army, he's got a couple of blasting charges up front, and I know what kind of damage these can do to unarmored units. He's also got a cannon in the back, and then he's got Thorek on his anvil. This is interesting, putting Thorek in the anvil, because Khorne does have a lot of units that are very good against infantry. So it's a pretty smart pick here, because my lords won't get that bonus against him, whereas I certainly expected his lords to be on foot. So that did catch me a bit off guard. Now I need to bait the blasting charges, or at least bring in a warrior. I have 3 warriors with shields. I have 3 bloodletters and 2 exalted bloodletters. And I need to time things properly to pull this off. I can't run in and get too hasty. He's got giant slayers back here. Thorek can significantly slow my progress with ruins. Cannons are dangerous to me from range. And he's got dragonback slayers. And there's a couple of hammerers here as well. Now I have some units that would, like, so for instance, hammers are an interesting one. Get a good charge into hammerers with, say, for instance, a bloodletter or an exalted bloodletter, and it's going to go great. Get a poor charge in, and the hammerers are one of the few units that actually have attack, and they're going to lay down a whooping on your bloodletters in a pretty proper hurry. So the hammerers are definitely going to be a unit to be dealt with. Look over here, I did manage to bait the blasting charges with the exalted hero, and it was worth it. It didn't hurt him that much, and we got all of the charges out of there. And then over here, I baited it on the Chaos Warriors. So these shielded warriors ended up being a good pick. They'll do quite well against miners in combat. Now I should be able to get into the juicier targets with my bloodletters, like these warriors with great weapons and these other armored units. So I'm pushing my way in, and my lord is looking for an opportunity and also just kind of acting as a distraction. I'm trying not to be too hasty on the cannon. I do want it dead. It is causing significant damage. But at the same time, I can't throw away my units in a futile attempt to get rid of the cannon. I did not bring any Furies. And Furies would certainly be helpful here. However, the Slayers could still try to counter them. Now over here, I'm bringing in some Exalted Bloodletters, and Indy very wisely pulls back and instead uses Thorek to spoil the charge, and then immediately hits them with a Rune of Wrath and Ruin. That hurts. That hurts, and that was a very nice counter tactic. However, I did get a pretty solid charge with this Bloodletter into the Peak Gate Guard. So that is going to be pretty good for me, but again, as you can see, as that melee drags on, the hammerers do really well, and this becomes a situation where hammerers become an interesting pick. They're potentially very dangerous to a lot of the Khornate infantry. However, with the poor charge or poor positioning, then the hammers become a big liability for the dwarves, so I think it's a very curious matchup. But this Exalted Bloodletter got absolutely dumpstered by Thorek, and so I brought in my Chaos Lord to get rid of Thorek, and I was thinking, all right, I'll get in here, kick his butt, get him out of here quick, because he is doing some major damage to my bloodletters. Again, we got some value out of this one, though, because it got quite a few kills on those hammerers, but this flank was not ideal for me. Now, on the other flank, it's going pretty well. I've cut through a couple of units. I've got a Bloodletter getting a clean charge into the Hammers. Hammers will win this fight, but I'll get some good damage in. I mean, I've got another Bloodletter free to push against the Dragonback Slayers. Slayers are not the best fight for Bloodletters. They kind of like just kill each other. But I've got this Exalted Bloodletter, and I really need to get some value in it. The obvious pick is to probably just go ahead and charge it right into this Hammer, but I'm worried about blobbing things and then just getting outflanked and stuff as well. And Thorek has just been very difficult to kill. I've had my Juggernaut in here. The Peak Gate Guard are acting like good chaff. I can't really get to him fully. So I figured I would be able to KO Thorek quickly, and that is just not the case. He's been very difficult to get rid of. I'm throwing my axes into the Peak Gate Guard and the other units, just trying to get some value. I can't get the cannon off the field because it is very well guarded by Slayers. Now, however, this over here, the Exalted Bloodletter came in, and once again, Indy kind of was trying to bait and switch my charge here, and he's able to kind of pincer it between some units that came free. I was trying to keep his Hammer from joining in that pincer, but this, again, this engagement is not what I needed, so my second Exalted Bloodletter, which probably should have just gone straight into the face of those Hammers and then been flank protected by the Bloodletters. Now that Exalted Bloodletter gets crapped on because it got completely surrounded. So that ended up being a big mess, and then Thorek actually just starts to straight up win against my Chaos Lord of Khorne. I did not expect this, because my Chaos Warrior of Khorne, or sorry, Chaos Lord of Khorne has significantly better melee stats. But this Ruin of Slowness and Sundered Armor and everything that's coming out, it hurts. And Thorek has taken a chunk out of me. He has been significantly more survivable than I expected on his mount here. He does have this 25% physical resistance, and I do not have magical attacks, so that may be part of what's helping to bail him out of that in some respect. Now, my Chaos Warriors did pretty good cutting through up front. I also have an Exalted Hero, the one I showed taking those charges earlier. He has been pretty valuable here, but not quite enough. I finally am able to get to the cannon, but now the problem is I'm running out of infantry. When those two Exalted Bloodletters got dumpstered, it left me short of armor-piercing power, and now I'm in a pretty big pickle, and I can't get rid of Thorek because everything I have is good against infantry, and he's not infantry. He counts as a large target like this. So I ended up with a couple of struggles that I didn't expect here. I expected my bonus versus infantry to be good pretty much across the board, and it wasn't. I expected the Exalted Bloodletters to get a whole bunch of killing done, and they didn't. And the main reason they didn't was because of some very nice micromanagement of spoiling a charge on the part of Indy, and basically really focusing in on those two units and making sure that they didn't get their value, whereas I should have been really focused on making sure those units did get their value. So for instance, rather than just taking them and charging in the way I did on the flanks, I could have potentially waited for my units up front to make the holes, and then I would have been able to dictate the terms of engagement into Indy, right? So if I got rid of some of his units first, held my Bloodletters back, yes, I'm getting shot by a cannon, that's annoying. The cannon wouldn't have totally KO'd my units. And then as soon as I got those breaks up front, I could have then used my victorious units to go and pin the more expensive ones and hopefully buy a better engagement for my Exalted Bloodletters, where maybe we could have done this. It was an interesting fight nonetheless. It was a pretty heavyweight fight. I came in and was doing pretty well early. But then as soon as Indy got a hold of those Exalted Bloodletters, it started to flip around. So I started thinking with him more about this build afterwards, and we had a long discussion about it that I thought was pretty fun, and I wanted to kind of cover part of that now. So a few things that obviously went well for me. I don't think my Lord was a terrible pick, and I don't think this hero was a terrible pick. My Chaos Warriors of Khorne were pretty valuable here. They managed to break the blasting charges and get through his front line of miners, right, without too much issue, so they were valuable. Plus, you have to have some shields, I think, in this fight, because the dwarves do have the option of pulling out the crossbows or pulling out some guns or other things, and if you just come up with a whole bunch of Bloodletters, you could be in trouble. And like, for instance, I know immediately the first thing a lot of people are going to say is chariots. You should have had chariots, Air. There's the Ruin of Slowness is significant slowing. He had the Dragonback Slayers, which is a double slow when things come in, and he had the cannon to shoot at chariots as well. I do not think chariots are always a guaranteed win pick against the dwarves. Now, if you get enough of them, and you're very good at microing them, they can be handy. But chariots can be bogged down. They can be killed, and they're very expensive. Now, they might say, well, Air, they might have done better than what you did with those Exalted Bloodletters. Well, they very well might have, because my Exalted Bloodletters did very poorly here. And looking back on it, I kind of feel like I would just not take these guys. I remember the first time I played Khorne against Dawi, it was against Dav plays, and I came out of that one thinking that, well, an Exalted Bloodletter's a must-pick against the Dwarves, but I don't think it is a must-pick. And if we look at the value here, my regular Bloodletters all had better value. This just gave my opponent a couple of units to really focus in on, rather than giving me more units to run at him. I could have had up to 5 Bloodletters, and then I would have still had leftover money to bring either more Axemen or, other types of units to the fight in order to help. I like that I didn't bring any huge targets for my opponent. He had the cannon there. The cannon did get solid work done, but it had to get it over a longer period of time. And while 1,000 value is good for a dwarf cannon, it's not obscene, right? And I didn't give him any targets that would basically give any missile weapons an obscene value right off the bat. So again, things went well for me up front. I was winning the fights up front, and I properly deflected the blasting charges up front. I think the Marauder Horsemen were a solid pick. I wouldn't touch anything there. These units were absolutely necessary in case he brought the gyrocopters, and they were doing fine. The battle just was over because of army losses. So I think that leave these Bloodletters at home, get a couple of extra standard Bloodletters in their place, and then just stack out whatever else to help fill in the army, and then just watch those engagements with the Hammerers, right? Make sure that you don't get put into that engagement. And if I was going to go after Thoric, I almost think that I probably should have had my Exalted Hero on a horse too, so that they could have had a little better movement. I was a little worried about putting them both on a horse because then it makes them vulnerable to Slayers and easier to shoot with missile weapons. At the same time, that would have allowed them to be more mobile, and then maybe I could have gooned out Thoric. But I'm thinking, yeah, two standard Bloodletters here. Pick up at least one Fury to be able to dive down into an artillery piece or onto other units and distract them. So I think maybe one Fury and then maybe some Marauders too. Like if I wanted, for instance, to maybe have a slightly cheaper version of what these Chaos Warriors did, possibly could have replaced them with Marauders. Now their leadership would have been a lot poorer, but I mean that is an option now to Khorne as the Chaos Marauders. So anyway, overall, this pick wasn't horrible. I think it was possible to win this fight. I just would have had to have better micro than Indy, and I did not. At this point, he did a better job on that. His army also was beatable, I think, in this case. So I think we both had armies that were capable of winning. He played the better micro, and he won because of it, and it was nice. And I thought this was a good battle that you all would enjoy because it involved, having to make some big plays to win. And it wasn't necessarily just someone getting flat out picked on either side, right? It was the person who made the craftier plays won the battle. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed this one. HeirofCarthage signing out for now. I'll see you soon with some more action in the Chaos DLC and the Blood for the Blood God, but hopefully you all enjoyed it.